All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Civil Justice Subcommittee for March the 26th, 2025. First order of the day is roll call. Members, please sign in and signify that you're present. Has every member signed in? Madam Clerk, take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, members, we do have a quorum, and do we have any personal orders this afternoon? Chairman Farmer, did you have any personal orders? Okay, I want to recognize my shadow that's here today, Lucas Duquette. If there's Lucas, let's make him feel welcome. Representative Travis, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I also have my shadow today, Braylon Thompson. Will you stand up? Where are you? There you are. From Manchester, Tennessee, 7th grader. Thank you, Braylon. Good job today.
All right, Representative Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've got my shadows here as well. I've got Zoe and Trinity Nasig, and they're from Powell, Tennessee. Where's my girls? There we are.
Welcome. All right, any other personal orders? All right, seeing none, just a few housekeeping things. Is anybody that's here needs to have a seat. If you're in the back, we'll have to have you to watch from the outside. That's in case of an emergency, we have to evacuate. There's 2 doors on either side. And signs are welcome. Just don't hold them up so your person behind you can't see. We had people drive all the way 4 or 5 hours, and they would like to be able to view the committee too. So thank you for that. And we'll jump into the calendar. We're going to take up the first calendar, item 1, House Bill 1097. Do I have a motion? And the second, we do have in Representative Zachary, I show an amendment. Would you like to run that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
We got a
Drafting
motion and a
code
second.
6481.
Absolutely. And any objection to adding that? Members, we're voting to add House or Amendment 6481 to House Bill 1097. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes prevail. Representative Zachary, you're recognized as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee and members. I'm carrying this bill on behalf of Speaker Sexton. The bill prevents local governments from enacting policies that conflict with Tennessee's state law and our Constitution, ensuring consistency and legal integrity across the state. Without oversight, local governments could impose regulations that infringe upon citizens' rights or contradict state law, creating confusion and potential legal harm. Rather than allowing unconstitutional legal policies to stand unchallenged in expensive lawsuits, this bill provides a proactive mechanism to identify and resolve violations. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Very good explanation. And I have Chairman Farmer first on the list.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I'm in a previous question.
Previous question has been called an objection. We do have an objection. All those in favor of previous question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes prevail. We're voting on House Bill 1097 as amended to send to full judiciary. All those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? And Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes, 1 no.
The ayes prevail. Full judiciary. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
As amended. Okay, up next is item number 2, House Bill 826 by Representative Faison. Do I have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Representative Faison, I show an amendment. Would you like to run that?
Yes, sir.
And I show 5320 as the drafting code.
Yes, sir. That's what I have.
Any rejection adding 5320 to 826? We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes prevail. Representative Faison, you are recognized as amended.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to be with y'all. Last year, Senator Hill and I passed a bill called the Parental Bill of Rights. It left some questions as it deals with children who need emergency care at school. It left questions about religious reasons to being taken out of school, and also children being recorded for artist purposes. We have a clarification bill just to make sure all that's clarified from last year, the questions that were had in this simple bill. That's all it does.
Very good. Any questions? Seeing none, we're voting to send House Bill 826. Representative Davis here.
I apologize. Thank you to the sponsor for this. One of the questions I had to do with regard to the videotaping and recording. I just want to make sure that people understand that that's clear, that what you did with regard to that permission, because you do have instances of divorce or situations of that child doesn't need to be publicly known what school they're going to. So I want to say thank you very much for correcting that. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, any further? All right, members, we're voting to send House Bill 826 to full judiciary as amended. All those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 ayes, 0 noes.
The ayes prevail. Full judiciary is amended.
Thank you, committee.
You're welcome. All right, what everybody's been waiting for, we're going to jump into the firearms calendar. Item number 1, House Bill 1332. Do I have a motion? We got a motion and a second. And Leader Lambert, you're recognized. And I do show an amendment.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Should be coded 4362.
That's what I show. Any
Yes, sir, Mr.
objection to adding 4362? Seeing none, we are going to be voting. All those in favor of adding 4362 to 1332 signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by no. The ayes prevail. Leader Lambert, you're recognized as amended on 1332.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Truly a cleanup bill. One aspect of this clarifies if you have 2 DUIs within 10 years, and if either of those are within the last 5 years, you cannot get a carry permit. Now, obviously, we do not require a permit in this state. We're a constitutional carry state, but that's just for the permit that cleans up that language. Then the second part of this actually makes the statute match with the court case that was settled by the Attorney General's office back in 2023 that an adult's an adult. So when you turn 18, you can get a permit just like anyone else. That used to be 21. This moves it back to 18, again, consistent with constitutional carry.
Very good. Members, we got any questions for the sponsor? Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
So I think you answered this a little bit, but your rationale for lowering the age from 21 to 18 is because you're saying an adult is an adult.
Leader Lambert.
Well, an adult is an adult under the law. I mean, not me saying that, that's just what it is. But in 2023, there was a lawsuit on that. It was settled by the Attorney General's office, and that is the law currently. So that is what they are following, and it's under a judicial order. This would just make the law match the judicial order.
All right. I wish they would make it match the brain science that tells us that an 18-year-old does not have a fully developed brain. So, but wanted to know the impetus. Thank you.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
The science is all over the place, depending upon the person. Sometimes it takes a long time beyond 18 for them to fully develop. It just kind of depends on the person.
All right. Seeing no further questions, we're voting to send House Bill 1332 to full judiciary as amended. All those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes, 1 no.
The ayes prevail. 1332 goes to full judiciary as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. Next up, item number 2, House Bill 1189. We got a motion, and do we have a second? We got a second. And Representative Grills, you are recognized, and I do not show any amendments.
That is correct. There's no amendments there. Am I recognized?
You are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. The purpose of this legislation is to expand the handgun permit to a firearms permit so that the individual can carry a firearm. This will put the state more in line with what the Constitution originally meant. The bill will allow permit holders, enhanced permit holders, to carry the weapon that they legally own. There are 37 other states that have some type of carry of long guns without a permit, and this proposal just puts us back into a more constitutional, correct position, in my opinion. With that, I know we have several people who'd like to testify, so with that, I will.
Absolutely.
Yield to
Members,
you.
we show any objection going out of session to hear the testimony. Seeing none, we'll go out of session. First, I have Mr. Richard Archie from the Tennessee Farms Association. And Mr. Archie, if you'll come up. And we'll give you 3 minutes. And Jackson here, he's our research analyst. He'll be taking the time. He was telling me that he went to school back in the 2nd grade to learn how to tell time, and he's been doing it ever since. So I don't know if that makes him a certified timekeeper, but I'd say it would. So, Mr. Archie, you're recognized. If you'll just say your name and who you're with.
and I am with the Tennessee Firearms Association. I'll be very brief. The state of Tennessee, from 1796 until 1989, said that it was lawful for us to carry long guns for all lawful purposes. This bill will move us back into compliance with the original construct of our state's Second Amendment analog from 1796. I think this is a very good thing. And what it does, it puts us in compliance with all these other states that touch us to say that it's lawful for us to carry in common use weapons for all lawful purposes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Archie? Representative Travis, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Archie, and thank you for being here today. My question to you is, with this bill, will I be able to carry a hunting rifle down Main Street or to Walmart or anything? Will this make that possible for me to carry that gun anywhere?
It would in fact do that, yes, sir.
Representative Travis?
Thank you.
Any further questions for Representative Johnson? You recognize?
I guess just to tack on a hunting rifle, but an AR-15 or any type of gun can be carried anywhere.
That is
that what you're
correct.
saying?
If they are in common use as defined by the Supreme Court, not dangerous and unusual, which is a conjunctive test under Catano, they in fact would be permissible, yes.
Representative Johnson. And Representative Todd, you're up next.
Thank you, sir. And did you say that this was legal up until 1989?
That is correct. There was never a stricture on Tennesseans being able to carry that type of firearm until 1989. In fact, if you look at the Heller decision, one of the facts that they bring forth that is in 1870, the Andrews v. State case said that in fact, even though the General Assembly of Tennessee had said it was illegal to carry handguns, there was no stricture at that time in 1871 on them carrying long guns. And so it was not until 1989 when it became a crime to do so.
Representative Todd.
Thank you for clarifying that. It is something for me to think back of, my childhood, my teenage years and early adult years when folks carried long guns in their vehicles. I mean, it was visibly obvious, even on school grounds. And then I didn't know exactly when that became outlawed. And that's very interesting to me that you kind of think back about 1989, what would have warranted doing that? Why would the legislature have even done that? And then again, how did they get away with it? Second Amendment makes it really clear that we have the right to keep and bear arms. Doesn't say pistols, doesn't say knives. It says arms, and that's arms of any kind. And as you said, the clarification has come down in multiple court cases has been anything that's not dangerous and unusual, both of those. So I appreciate you clarifying that.
Mr. Archie, can you follow up?
No, sir.
Okay, Representative Johnson, you're next.
I guess I think we always need, when we're talking about our Tennessee Constitution granting the right to bear arms, we also need to mention that the reason we can create some rules is because in that exact same sentence, it says that the legislature has the right to regulate weapons in Tennessee for the safety of the public.
Mr. Archie.
Well, our original construct that Thomas Jefferson said was the least imperfect and the most Republican of all the state documents, in Article 11, Section 26, said the free men of this state have the right to keep and to bear arms for their common defense. That was changed from that construct in 1870 to make sure that the freed black slaves who were freed at the end of the Civil War were denied an opportunity to carry firearms to withstand the KKK and the Night Riders. A study of history will prove that to be this fact.
Representative Johnson.
Yes, I was referring to the Tennessee Constitution.
That is the Tennessee Constitution that I was quoting.
All right, seeing no further questions, I do have one. Did you say some other states are already doing this?
Excuse me?
Did you say some other states are already doing this in law?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Right now, I believe the number is 39 states already allow this. We're one of only 7 states that make it a crime to carry a long gun. We join New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts, Illinois, and Florida, for what reason I don't understand. But we're one of 7 states that make it a crime to carry a long gun, and only 7 states.
Mr. Archie, thank you for your testimony today, and thank you for clearing that up. And we do have some more people to talk, and thank you. Elizabeth Stroker from the Department of Safety and Colonel Matt Perry. And is there a Ken Berry that wishes to speak? Was it on this bill, Ken? Okay. You can come on down and get a seat too. We'll call on you too, as well. And just as everyone else, if you'll just state your name, who you're with, you'll have 3 minutes. And we want to start with Ms. Stroker first.
Elizabeth Stroker, Legislative Director for the Department of Safety and Assistant General Counsel. As a lot of people in this committee know, this is a bill we've seen, and I want to start with, I have the utmost respect for the bill sponsor. Definitely understand where he is coming from. So I'll let Colonel Perry get into it a little bit, but the department's concern come from the sheer fact of changing the handgun permitting to allow for any type of firearm. And since the handgun permitting allows you to carry within this state unless it is otherwise prohibited through posting. The concern is, think of people, and we've seen other states that have legalized this. It's been a problem in these other states. People carrying around, large rifle, high capacity style weapons in front of schools, in front of churches, in front of synagogues. People walking up and down Beale Street in Memphis. People going up and down Broadway here in Nashville, in front of the Pred Center, in front of this building, really anything that you could think of, especially sensitive areas such as your DCS facilities where tensions run high, any type of facility where you may be taking away someone's license. We know with the Department of Health, those can get pretty heated, and there are already issues with people trying to bring firearms into those buildings. And so having a mechanism in place where people can then carry these high capacity style weapons outside of these type of sensitive areas where tensions can be high, it will cause chaos. It will cause a lot of people to be worried. And they're going to be then calling law enforcement saying, hey, we're in a lockdown. Can you please come out and get rid of this person or make this person leave? And law enforcement's response will have to be, they are lawfully doing that. They have to stay there. And so we feel that the current law is sufficient for you to protect yourself carrying a handgun. And from a safety perspective, we do not think it is necessary to create this type of security safety issue within the state of Tennessee.
Thank you, Ms. Stroker. Who would like to speak next? Mr. Music, if you'll just say who you are and who you're with, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Jimmy Music, representing the Tennessee Sheriff's Association and the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police. I'll be brief because I don't want to echo all the same points that Ms. Stroker just had, but the general concern from the chiefs and sheriffs has been dealing with essentially those calls for service and how to react. And talking about those locations and especially sensitive areas, I mean, one that comes to mind is voting locations, polling locations that could be intimidating to some. And really the problem that your local law enforcement is going to have is how do we handle these individuals? And I don't think that anybody is really concerned about the non-agitators. I'm not too concerned about that, but the reality is that we know that these will exist, and because we saw some media coverage out of Texas where there was individuals behaving in this way and lawfully allowed to do so, and there wasn't really anything that law enforcement could do. And we're the ones that are charged with, keeping the peace. And so that's the crux of the concerns that they have.
Thank you. And Colonel Perry, you're up next.
Thank you, Chairman. Colonel Matt Perry, Tennessee Highway Patrol. I'm really just going to echo everything that's been said by these two. For us, we always talk about the people intending to do the right thing are really never the problem. Our concern is what the bill will allow for people who, extremists, and we've seen them in this building, around this building, at varying places around the state. It will give them the ability to intimidate, because that's, that has happened. It's happened to Jimmy's point in Texas was somebody at a school, in front of a school, walking around with a rifle loaded. And at some point, law enforcement was like, "Hey, there's nothing we can do about it." And that's our biggest concern is the chaos it will create, the fear that it will create in everyone. We don't believe that, high capacity magazines, extra ammunition is necessary to walk around Tennessee and defend yourself. We think the law as it is sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Berry, you're next. And if you'll just state your name and if you represent anybody.
Yes, Dr. Ken Berry. I unofficially am speaking for farmers in rural communities. I live in a very rural area. I have a sheep farm, and I carry a rifle with me on the farm when I'm working. And I'm a bit confused because currently, if I'm with my flock of hair sheep and a coyote comes out of the woods in an attempt to predate my sheep, I can pull out my rifle and defend my property, and I'm well within my rights to do that. I think that's correct. But if another type of coyote brings some illegal immigrants onto my farm to predate my sheep, if I pull out my rifle to protect my property, I'm then in violation of the law. Do I understand that correctly? It's my farm and my sheep, my property.
Yes. So you're here to do a testimony for 3 minutes, and then you get to, people ask you questions.
Yes.
But we don't accept questions like this. But
So that's my testimony.
If a member wants to answer that, they can in just a few minutes. Okay.
That's my testimony, and I would be eager for any member to answer that question.
Absolutely. Members, we do have a list of people, and first up is Representative Todd.
I've got a few questions. First is for Mr. Music. Are you here? Did you say you are here lobbying for the two organizations you mentioned?
I am a registered lobbyist for the two associations. Yes, sir.
Okay. So those associations do employ a lobbyist.
And y'all are free to go back and forth on this.
Chairman Todd, myself, Mike Agee, we added David O'Neill this past year as well.
Okay. Thank you for that. Just kind of wanted that on the record because I think their previous IRS filing said they did not employ a lobbyist. So I'm kind of curious when that changed. But the next question I think would be from Ms. Stroker. So you mentioned you have concerns. You did not mention the department is opposed to this bill. Do y'all have a position, or I'm just trying to get clarification?
And you're welcome to go back and forth. Y'all are.
The department is opposed to the bill. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I know you're familiar, you're an attorney, so you're very familiar with all the court cases that were mentioned by Mr. Archie and others. You're familiar with other cases like the Bruin decision and all of those, and the instructions that the Supreme Court has given and other federal courts have given in all of those cases that tell very clearly what the Second Amendment says. I mean, it's in English. I can read it. Everybody in this room can read it. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, is your position that long guns are not arms, or can you? I'm trying to get clarification on exactly where you can be opposed to this.
So, Chairman, thank you for the question. The Bruin decision did not actually say that states cannot regulate firearms. It said that what New York was doing was too arbitrary and was not tied to a reasonable type of regulation on that constitutional right. There was an additional case last summer where the Supreme Court clarified that courts interpreting Bruin to mean that you cannot regulate firearms is not accurate. And they further said states still have that right to regulate firearms as long as it is not arbitrary, or if it doesn't hold a, rational, reasonable standard to that high level scrutiny for constitutional rights. Additionally, the Supreme Court came out with a case today where it said that firearms could be regulated in regards to background checks. And so Bruin did not expressly say that states cannot regulate, and further decisions by the Supreme Court have reiterated that. So There is no current case law that says Tennessee is doing anything unconstitutionally or that states cannot regulate in this manner.
Multiple cases, though, multiple federal cases that have been upheld all the way to the Supreme Court have indicated that a weapon must be dangerous and unusual, both of those, before it can be outlawed, can be regulated, can be a crime to carry, is my understanding of multiple cases. And so I'm not understanding, I guess, exactly the premise you're giving there, because again, there's quite a bit of precedent that has been set, I believe. And so we might disagree on that from the interpretations. But again, I'm referring to a variety of other cases, even going back to Andrew v. State with the state of Tennessee. So I welcome your comment on that.
Yeah, and again, I've kind of delved into this world a lot. I've worked with a lot of attorneys who work in this world, consistent with the Attorney General's office on a lot of these subject matters. And you have to read the cases as a whole. And while the cases we have seen have been specific to a specific law that was enacted in that state, that does not mean that it is generally applicable to the entire country as a whole. Again, we have not had any issues where we have been found to be out of compliance. We did have the agreed order with Beeler dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds, which we immediately rectified once that order came out. But outside of that, we have not been found or told that any of the restrictions on carrying firearms in the state have been unconstitutional. And again, subsequent Supreme Court cases after Bruin have made that very clear. And so it may just be a difference of interpretation of those court cases, but that is the general consensus of all of the attorneys that I work with.
Well, reading the comments that have come out of the Supreme Court with those decisions, and obviously those decisions are about one specific case, but the instructions that they give in those are very telling about their position on this. And I will certainly disagree with you, because I believe the Second Amendment is very clear in our Constitution, just like all the other enumerated rights, that it shall not be infringed. And the definition of arms at that time, when we were founded, when the Constitution was ratified, meant the current military arms of the day. And that was very well accepted and very well known. So restricting folks since 1989 just seems a really odd thing to me. And I think this bill helps correct that wrong, because I don't think 39 other states, we don't hear of issues. I mean, y'all mentioned one or two, but out of 39 other states that allow this freely, you would think we'd have a story every day about this somewhere of law-abiding citizens causing some problem that they're not committing a crime. We're not talking about criminals here. Criminals are already excluded. This is only for permit carriers, folks that have been vetted by your own background checks, your own system. So we're not talking about just anybody and everybody. So that's what's kind of baffling to me, that y'all would be opposed to this. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I could, if any court that has control over our department in our state tells us that we are doing something unconstitutionally, we will certainly correct that. The state has just not been found to do anything relative to firearms that has been a violation of that Second Amendment right. And as far as, we've only talked about two state with examples, those are the most recent and the biggest ones that we've seen. There obviously are other examples. We just don't want to have to bog down the committee with that time. And I do think we just have a philosophical and legal difference. And we certainly respect where you're coming from, and the department is just coming from the public safety aspect, making sure that Tennesseans stay safe and feel safe within the state.
On those two cases that y'all mentioned, the two items that you noted, were those permit holders?
I can't answer that.
Okay. I mean, this comes up every year. I thought, well, y'all probably researched it since last year and would know all the details around those. But I would venture to guess they probably weren't, because I think the folks that hold a permit in this state are the most responsible citizens we have. And I think they're not going to do something that's just ridiculous and threatening to someone, or even appearing to be threatening to someone. So I think this bill, to me, makes perfect sense, that these are folks that certainly are trusted. And just like the gentleman on his farm, he could easily be violating the law right now if he left his farm and had a flat tire just 100 yards down the road and took his rifle out of his truck so that it wouldn't get stolen and walked back to his farm. He's violating the law. Now, whether there's a DA that would prosecute him or not, I don't know, but he's violating the law technically, and nobody in this room would think that's something that should be a violation. So I think this needs to be cleared up and fully supported.
Thank you. Representative Johnson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I didn't think it really needed to be said, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. People are human beings. They have human dignity, regardless of whether you agree with them or not, and should be talked about as human beings and nothing else. I understand that we can regulate guns. It's very clear from Supreme Court decisions and everything else, as you have been saying, Ms. Stroker, and appreciate that, because if it's been since 1989 that this hasn't been the law, some of these organizations here supporting this bill would have challenged it in the Supreme Court, and they have not. So that's interesting. Why no challenge if they say it's unconstitutional?
And you're free to go back and forth also.
There have been challenges. It has just been found that that the laws have not been unconstitutional.
Great. So they actually have challenged and been turned down, shot down, correct, so to speak.
Any follow-up?
No.
Okay. And I wanted to verify we have Sheriff's Department, Police Department, and Tennessee Highway Patrol that are against this legislation, correct?
I would also add, I don't think TBI signed up in time, but they are opposed as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Travis, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe in our Constitution, and I believe in handguns. I own quite a few handguns. I do dove hunting. I take my gun in my truck to the dove field. When I do target practice, I take my gun to my truck to do target practice. I do not believe that someone should be walking out in front of Walmart with a shotgun or a long gun. I don't even want to see a guy with a Clint Eastwood pistol strapped on his side going through Walmart. It just makes me nervous. I can tell you right now, probably up here in this dais, there's probably 4 concealed weapons right here today. But I believe in guns. But man, a long gun, walking down the road, going in the grocery store with a long, I just don't understand how that can happen. You having a gun on your property, I think that's fine. I own a farm. I don't own any sheep, but I've owned a farm and I want to protect my property. That's not, I don't think that's in this bill. This bill is only about being able to carry a long gun down Main Street or by a school. I just don't see any good that can come out of this. I'm sorry. I just don't. And believe me, you can stop the clapping for me right now, because I am a carrier. I love guns, but there's a place for guns, and it's not walking down Main Street with a AK or whatever it is. It's just not a place. So I will be a no on this, and I love the chairman, Grills, love him to death. I just can't support this one. So that's where I stand on this.
Any follow-up from departments? All right, seeing none, and I don't have anybody else on my list, we'll go back in session. And Mr. Sponsor, you're recognized. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to just start off by recognizing that life has value. All life has value, from 9 months before you're born until the day that you die and go on to meet with the Lord. All life has value. And that value, that life has rights. And those rights were granted to us when we were born into this great country of America. And the Second Amendment was given to us by our founding so that our governments would not infringe upon those rights. So I'm here today to try my best to protect the rights that our founding fathers gave us. Now, in respect to the constitutional carry that we passed several years ago, I agree with that premise. I think that's the more constitutionally sound way to go about it. But we're not talking constitutional carry today. We're talking permit carry. we're not talking about allowing someone to carry anything without a permit. We're talking about carrying with a permit. And that's what this bill is about, giving someone who has gone through the background check, who has met the qualifiers that the TBI has set forth. And when they make those qualifiers, then the TBI says you have met the minimum standard. Now you're qualified to now have this permit. And when you get that permit, you are then legally able to carry the weapon.
All right, and I do not show any questions, so we'll be voting to send House Bill 1189 to full judiciary. All those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 3 noes.
The ayes prevail. 1189 goes to full judiciary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Thank you. Next up, item number 3, House Joint Resolution 53 by Representative Reedy. Do I have a motion? I got a motion and a second. Representative Reedy, I don't show an amendment, so you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. And of course, you've seen me on this subject matter before. It has passed both the Senate and the House. A real quick, what we're talking about is a constitutional amendment that would be proposed on Article 1, Section 26 that would be rewritten that would clarify that the citizens have the right to keep and bear arms. Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Same as last year, I believe. Any questions? And see, we do have testimony. Mr. Archie, if you'll come up first. Just like last time, if you'll just state your name, who you're with, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Again, my name is C. Richard Archie, and I'm with the Tennessee Firearms Association. The Second Amendment analog that we have right now is in contravention to the one that we had in 1796. The individuals who formed this state, the first governor of this state, believed that each individual had a right to carry his rifle, his shotgun, his handgun, any of those things to defend liberty. And when they wrote the Constitution, they were specific in what they said, that the free men of this state have the right to keep and to bear arms for their common defense. There wasn't any of the silliness about the General Assembly having the power to regulate those arms whatsoever. It didn't exist then, and it needs to be corrected now.
Thank you, Mr. Archie. And just for clarification, we are out of session for testimony. So any questions for Mr. Archie? All right, seeing none, we appreciate you being here. And next up is Mr. John Gentry and Jonah Cohane. Is Joanna here? You'll come up and have a seat, and Mr. Gentry, y'all can, I guess, let's let ladies go first, and then we'll allow you to.
Bump you.
Let's go.
I guess you want me to go first?
And you're recognized. You just state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Absolutely. My name is Johanna Cohane. I'm from Robertson County. Thank you, Chairman, Committee, and Sponsor for allowing me to speak. I signed up to speak on this resolution because I'm a firearm owner, and I want to give a perspective that while it may not be all's, I know many firearm owners would agree with it. But first, I want to look closely at what this resolution is seeking to change. That the citizens of this state have a right to keep and to bear arms for their common defense, but the legislator shall have the power by law to regulate the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. I'll repeat, with a view to prevent crime. This isn't a rule against firearm control to remove rights, restrict rights, deny rights, or anything like that. This is looking at allowing the legislator the ability to make regulations aimed at preventing crime. I just want to make sure that's understood. As a resident of Tennessee and as a firearm owner, I stand by my right to bear arms. I enjoy target shooting. I also have my firearm for protection. Many times, whenever firearm control is spoken about, it is pointed out that the majority of firearm owners are law-abiding citizens, and that is very true. No one is disputing that. No one is disputing that the people of Tennessee and the United States have a right to own firearms. But just as I have a right to own a firearm, my friends, family, and neighbors have rights as well. Business owners have rights. Government officials have rights. They have a right to life and liberty. Last May, just one county away from where I live, a man opened fire on a pizza delivery driver for parking in his driveway. Last January, a man fired at 2 Amazon employees who were doing their job delivering packages in Franklin. On average, 672 Tennesseans die by suicide with a firearm every year. On average, 105 children in Tennessee die by firearm every year, with 60% being homicides. In fact, a 2023 report by the state found that firearm deaths are a leading external cause of child death in Tennessee and across the United States. Tennessee's 2021 firearm death and rate in children represents a 17% increase since 2017, 36% higher rate than 2021 national average, and evidence from the review of firearm deaths show that most, 93%, firearm child deaths were preventable. Today and yesterday, there have been several bills heard and planned to be heard about increasing penalties or creating offenses for such things as firing into a car, to name one. Last year, almost exactly a year ago, because it was the 1-year anniversary of that tragic Covenant shooting, I, a firearm owner who believes in my right to bear arms, was standing along Broadway with a line of other people in remembrance and asking for this body to take some action. A car pulled up at the light and asked what was going on. So I approached to speak to him. I told him why we were there. He answered, "I don't want to lose my firearms." I answered him, "I don't want you to either. But maybe there could be a rule about safe storage requirements so that firearms are only in the hands of the owner, and a waiting period so that one dark and impulsive moment doesn't take a life." He said, "I can agree with that." The light turned green, he drove on. I know I'm not alone in this opinion. I know that this is a resolution and not a bill, but I also recognize that a resolution today can become a bill in the future. I'm asking this body to not give away its duty and responsibility to enact regulations with a view to prevent crime. Even if it may be hard or unpopular with the lobbyists who come to your offices, it is popular with your constituents. There have been many polls, I believe most.
Ms. Cohen. Ms. Cohen, your 3 minutes are up, and we'll let Mr. Gentry speak, and then we'll have unlimited time for questions. Mr. Gentry, you're recognized.
My name's John Gentry. I have generally support this proposed amendment to the Constitution. I have a little concern taking out common defense, and I'd like to have more discussion on why that's a good idea, why that's prudent to take out common defense. What's my greatest concern with all of these proposed amendments to our state constitution is they're not published. Article 11, Section 3 describes the process, and it says 6 months prior to the election of the Second General Assembly proposing such amendment, it shall be published to the people. And the Black's Law Dictionary definition of publish is to circulate, to make known to the people in general. I have a copy of the proceedings and debates from the 1870 Constitutional Convention, and I'd be happy to tell you what they thought published meant back in 1870, because they had the same publishing requirement in 1870. We are not publishing these to the people. And the reason they say 6 months prior is because it gives you an opportunity to vet the candidates and say, are you for this amendment or are you against it? Because there's nothing more important than amending our state constitution. And so, I'm not saying shoot this down in committee. What I am saying is, please, one of you, let me explain to you what publishing meant in 1870. I'd be happy to explain it in Q&A. But what I'm asking the committee is to amend this legislation, and where it says in there now that this is published according to Article 11, Section 3 on the Secretary of State and General Assembly website, instead of that it's going to be properly published to the people out there. I think it was around 2020 when this issue first came to my attention. The URL on the Secretary of State website, it was sos.tn.gov/gaming-business services-charitable contributions. No mention whatsoever about proposed constitutional amendment. Nothing. And I don't think that there is a webmaster out there that would be so stupid and incompetent as to name a web page with proposed amendments with that fake URL. It seemed deceptive to me. And so I raised that issue with the Secretary of State and most of you in email, and it was pretty timely corrected. I think it is still on the Secretary of State website. I think it's still obscure. It's just a little thin tan bar on the top of the election page on the Secretary of State website. How many people out there go to the Secretary of State website? How many go, and if they go to the General Assembly website, good luck finding a
Mr. Gentry, that's your 3 minutes, but we'll have unlimited time for questions. So members, do we have any questions from the witnesses? And Representative Johnson, you recognize.
Thank you. People have referred back to 1800s. I'm curious, what do you think is the difference and why our Constitution now says that we should be able to regulate guns? What do you think that might be?
And y'all are free to go back and forth on this.
Thank you, sir. I will point out that in the Second Amendment, it did begin with the well-regulated militia. So the idea of regulation has always existed, and we can debate what that means. But obviously, if you want to have a firearm, you want to know that it's in good shape, and you want to know that you're in good shape to use it when you need it. And that's where the idea of a lot of, I think, when we talk about common sense firearm control, that's where that comes from. I, as a firearm owner, when I bought my handgun, the very next purchase I made was for a safe that I could keep it in. And I'm in a household with just 2 adults. I don't have any children in my household. I do have children that visit, but I'm in a household with 2 adults. But I purchased a safe because I want to know that my firearm is where I expect it to be, so that if it does come to it and I do need it, that I know where it is. And that happened. Someone that lived in the house behind me, I'm in a rural area of Robertson County. They thought that they had 2 armed men breaking into the back of their house. And the police came and they were searching for these 2 men. And I knew that where my firearm was because I keep it in a safe place. And so for a while, I was in my laundry room, which is my tornado shelter as well. But I was there with my firearm because I didn't know where these 2 people were. It ended up not being 2 people breaking in. I don't know what they saw or what they thought, but it wasn't that situation. But for about an hour while the police were searching the neighborhood, we didn't know that. So I think the idea of regulation has been there before. But then obviously, when you talk about when the Constitution was being written and you had, single shot muskets or something like that. I mean, I don't have one, but I really, really badly want to own like a 6-shot revolver, like in the Westerns. And what we have now is nowhere close to what a 6-shot revolver in the Westerns is. We have much better firepower. We have laser sights. We have all sorts of things that they didn't have. And so it may be that we have weapons that need regulation more because of that. When you're talking about an AR-15, there was somebody, walking around, I think it was Memphis maybe, around a school holding one. And the idea that that person wasn't doing anything wrong until they start firing. But once they start firing an AR-15, it's too late. If you had a single shot musket, yes, it's too late, but not as too late as an AR-15. The damage you can do is so much quicker with that weapon. And I think that also probably comes in, to back in when we were fighting the Revolutionary War, soldiers could stand 10 feet away from each other and shoot and miss. I would say that nobody in this room that's here that owns firearms is going to be missing from 10 feet away anymore. We just have better equipment, better aim, better firepower than they had back then.
Thank you. So what you're saying is that the firearms that we have now are far more dangerous than what we had in the past. Therefore, we need to have the potential to regulate. Thank you so much.
Okay, seeing nobody else, we'll go back in session. We appreciate y'all being here, and that goes for every witness that's came today. We appreciate your all's testimony, so thank you. They signed up to speak, so if you sign up next week, so we will ask you to leave if you can't sit down and let's conduct business, so, yeah. Representative Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just stand ready for questions.
Okay, we don't have any questions. Without objection, we're voting to send House Joint Resolution 53 to full judiciary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Correction, vote aye. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes, 1 no.
House Joint Resolution 53 goes to full judiciary. Congratulations. Next up. All right, next up is item number 4, House Bill 1287. We got a motion and a second, and Representative Hill, you are recognized.
Your ignorance will hurt innocent people. You are not responsible for people.
And Representative Hill, you are recognized if you'd like to describe your bill. We do have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got an amendment. It's 3705.
That's what I showed. Do we have a motion and a second on the amendment? We got a motion, and do we have a second? We do have a second. All those in favor of adding 3705 to House Bill 1287 signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes prevail. Representative Hill, you're recognized on 1287 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As amended, this bill makes background checks free from the state's $10 fee. And the purpose of the bill is to increase awareness about how easy background checks on gun sales are to get, and more awareness, more background checks, especially on person-to-person gun sales. And with that, pending any questions, Mr. Chairman, seek passage.
Thank you. And we do have some testimony. If no objection, we'll go out of session. And Rachel Russell and Patrick Powell, if you'll come on down, you'll have 3 minutes and just identify yourself and who you're with. And you all are recognized, and each of y'all have 3 minutes, so y'all can decide who goes first.
Thank you, Chairman. Patrick Powell, Policy Director with Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. The Bureau is adamantly opposed to 1287 as amended. This would eliminate the TICS fee. The TICS fee has been in place since 1998. It funds the entire TICS unit. It funds the operations, the system improvements, any kind of personnel that we have. It has worked, and if it isn't broke, please don't try to fix it. The elimination of this fee would end the TBI's ability to be responsive to both gun purchasers and gun safety. This would take away our ability to fund necessary staff improvements or system improvements without going through the general funding process. This puts us in a situation where if there was a system failure after session had adjourned, we could be a year plus out from having the funds to fix that kind of system. As of right now, we would have the system funds and we could fix that and be responsive to the needs of both gun purchaser and gun safety advocate. Like I said, the downstream effects of this could be detrimental to both gun safety and gun purchaser alike.
Thank you. And Rachel, were you recognized?
Rachel Russell, Deputy Counsel of Operations for the Bureau. And I'm going to repeat a little bit of what Patrick had mentioned. But yes, if you look at the statute, the way that the statute is written, the $10 fee is passed on. But statutorily, it is a $10 fee that we bill to the gun dealer. That fee is not statutorily passed on to the purchaser. Now, we know in practice that that $10 is passed on to the purchaser. But that is the right of the gun dealer to do. And similarly, if this $10 is removed, or even if it stays the way that it is, the amount that a gun dealer charges for a background check that they complete is up to that gun dealer to decide. Our current statutory language does not address what a gun dealer can charge to a purchaser, whether that is someone buying the gun in their store or whether that is someone completing a private sale. The statute doesn't currently address it. This bill does not address it. The way that the statute is written is a $10 fee to the gun dealer. And again, removing that $10 fee to the gun dealer does not change the right of that private business owner to handle the way that they do background checks for individuals. And so that's the main piece that we want to draw the attention of the committee. In addition, the way that the fee works is because the fee is attached to each purchase or the amount of work that is required of the unit, it allows us to be nimble in response to that. the point of this bill, as I have learned from talking to the sponsor and to the individual that brought the bill, is to, in hopes, increase the amount of background checks that come through the Bureau. The issue with that is, even if this bill passes under our current funding, that amount that we have attached is based on the background checks that we are completing today. So we will be funded to continue doing the number of background checks we are doing today. If those background checks increase because this bill does in fact work, the problem is we will not be able to account for that. The added work that we will be asked to do, we can't account for. And what that means is that we are not able to provide the services that we need to the Tennessee citizens, both exercising their Second Amendment right and to ensure that guns are kept out of the hands of criminals. We're not going to be able to do that. If we're going to have longer response times, these additional things that we do are going to diminish. In addition to running just these background checks, our unit also makes notification of individuals who are trying to purchase a firearm who are fugitives from justice. We also make notification of stolen firearms. We complete training to both law enforcement, judges, dealers, and courts. Those services are going to have to diminish because we don't have the ability to keep that up. And in addition, that reserve fund that we have also helps us fix issues when they come up. Specifically, we have an issue with our phone system right now that we are going to be funding with this fund. It allows us to do that.
Ms. Russell, that's 3 minutes. We do have unlimited time for questions. Do we have any questions? And Representative Davis, you're number one on the list.
Would you like to finish, please?
And y'all are welcome to go back and forth. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative Davis. No, I mean, the only thing that I guess just kind of wrapping it up, what both Patrick Powell and I both said, is that the current funding stream works. We would be the only, it's also consistent with the way that every other single point of contact state in the country functions. So we are a single point of contact state, which means that instead of individuals who try to purchase in Tennessee having to go through the FBI to do that background check, we, the TICS unit that lives at the TBI, we do those locally at the state level. I have checked, and every other single point of contact state in the country functions in the same way. They are fee-based. And then additionally, we won't be passing that on to the taxpayer to fund instead of the dealer or the purchaser. That's also consistent with other background checks that we do. For instance, with teachers or individuals that are going to work at a child care agency, they pay for that background check. So it's just consistent with the way that we operate in other situations as well.
Representatives.
Yeah. So when I went to the website, it's obviously got on there where the gun dealer clicks on it to do the background check. So if it's an individual and I'm wanting to do, if I'm going to sell it to another individual, where or how, what's that process? How do I do that? How do I do that background check process, or do you have that in place already?
Yeah, so they're allowed to do that right now. So the way that this statute is written right now, again, it doesn't address that, because what the FBI allows is for individuals that are engaging in a private sale, they can go to an FFL, they can go to a gun dealer currently and ask them to run that background check for them. So the individual who's selling can go to the gun dealer with the purchaser and ask them to run that background check. Now, based on what we know that's currently happening in Tennessee today is there are some gun dealers that choose not to offer that additional service. There are some that will complete that transaction, but they charge on top of that. They charge varying amounts, anywhere from $25 to $100. Again, it's up to the dealer because they are a private business and they can charge and choose to do what they want. This bill does not address private sales in any way. It is our opinion that this bill does not change the current practice as far as that is concerned.
Thank you.
Any follow-up? Representative Johnson, you're next.
Thank you. I guess what I'm curious about, I understand what the bill sponsor wants to do. They want to, it's something I want to do as well, make sure that everyone has a background check. And so, as plain spoken as possible, explain to us why you feel this will interfere with creating more safety with those additional background checks.
And y'all are free to go back and forth on this one too.
So it would be the position of the Bureau that That's my understanding of the bill as well. Is the intent is to get more individuals to go and complete background checks. The conversations that I have had with them is that what they are trying to achieve individuals can currently do, and what the hindrances that currently exist, this bill does not fix any of those issues. Now, on the flip side, if I am wrong, and if this bill does work and it does increase the number of individuals who go and get a background check, the issue with that is because those background checks, obviously that will increase the work that the Bureau is conducting. That means that we will not be able to respond to that added number of background checks without coming back and asking for more funding for more employees to complete those. So what that means is in that interim, assuming that we did get that funding, in that interim, our response times, the times that we're able to turn around a transaction, the time that those individuals are going to get a background check have to wait, that time is going to get longer and longer, obviously, because our employees are handling more work. And then additionally, the rest of the things that we're able to do to help keep citizens safe, that's by nature going to have to drop off because we're going to have to make sure that we are doing our main priority, which is to complete those background checks.
Okay, so
I was just
sorry,
going
go
to say,
ahead.
so that makes it detrimental to the gun purchaser because of longer wait times. It also makes it detrimental to the gun safety advocate because it's less personnel at the Bureau to audit, to confirm, to make sure that the records are accurate and so on. So it's
Okay.
bad for both sides.
So they would be paying the gun seller. You all would not get the funding for that, but ultimately the check would come to you. And so you're doing more background checks, but you're not getting the funding for those checks. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what this bill does is currently in statute, there's a section of our gun purchasing statute, which is 3917, 1316. The current language says that TBI can charge a fee of $10 for the background checks that we run, and that we are allowed to bill that $10 fee to the gun dealer. There's also some language in there about us having the ability to keep that funding that we do not use for the purposes of background checks and to continue using that for the purposes of supporting the background check process. That is the language that this bill is deleting out of our current statutory code. And that's the only thing that it changes out of our current law.
Have you thought about something that can be done to this bill to make it work for both parties?
So I can tell you that we have had conversations and have tried to offer alternatives. For instance, things like doing a public safety campaign about the fact that you can go to a dealer right now if you would like to have a background check done on a private sale. We have floated other ideas in an attempt to come up with an alternative, but I can't speak to that any further.
And things along the funding scheme will not work. I mean, there is not an option that works because the current scheme has worked since 1998, has never been changed. You know, inflation, it would be twice as much now and it's never had to be increased. It works. And to do any kind of difference in the fees or to switch it to a general kind of appropriation fund simply will not allow us to be as responsive as we are now and will not allow us to provide both the safety and the service as timely.
Representative Johnson, you have any follow-up?
No, that's it.
Representative Todd, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my question is really about the cost that you guys incur. So per background check, so right now you're charging $10. What is your actual cost?
And you're welcome to go back and forth.
So I'm going to answer that in a slightly different way, in that I guess it's hard to answer it in the frame of a cost. So I'll tell you what the $10 fee does do. So the $10 fee funds our entire TICS unit. So we do not use any state appropriation dollars for anything in the TICS unit. So we're talking about our TICS unit currently has, we have 32 employees when we're fully staffed. So it is funding the salary for those 32 employees. It is funding the overtime for those employees. It is funding any of the maintenance, any of the upgrades, anything that we have to do with our systems. Literally everything that we use in the TICS unit, any of that cost is covered by this $10 fee.
Okay, maybe I'll ask a question a different way then. Do you generate an overage over your cost?
And I can address that as well. And Chairman, one thing that I did is I pulled, obviously you're aware that there was a reserve, Representative Todd, and I've had I pulled our letters for the last 5 years, and actually going back, you can see And we've talked about how this system is used to fund upgrades and maintenance and support and things of that nature. So if you go back to 2019, that reserve fund was in the negative in 2019. It has gradually started to increase over the last several years to the number that you see today. And that is because we have not hit that point that we've needed to do a major upgrade or major maintenance and support. I can tell you that we have several things on the list. The phone system that I mentioned just a minute ago, there are other upgrades and new systems that we are at the point that even as early as next year that contract is going to run out, and we would be using that funding to support that. So it is something that just by nature is going to kind of continue to increase for several years, and then we need it and we kind of drain it and we start all over again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no further questions, we'll go back in session. We appreciate y'all being here today. All right, members, do we have any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none. Mr. Sponsor, Representative Todd, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think I understand what you're trying to do here, and I certainly admire it. And would you summarize what the agency just told us as we want to keep the funding mechanism the way it is so that we can kind of build up this reserve and we don't have to request money from the General Assembly for things? Is that accurate?
And y'all are welcome to go back and forth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for that question, because I appreciate the TBI. I appreciate the work they do. We have visited a few times on this. We're working together on other bills. And so we certainly don't want it to feel or appear that this legislation is adversarial to their interests. But at the same time, the objection that was raised about the legislation is going to bankrupt the program is not accurate. First, the money is coming from a different place. And Chairman Todd, this speaks to what your question is. We're shifting it from a fee over into the general fund, which means that it's an appropriation, which means it comes into the legislature for review and ultimately for control. And let me go just a little bit further and expound upon that. According to the fiscal note that says the TBI collects $5.9 million annually from this fee. The cost to run the program is $4.8 million. That also right now, and obviously that's a difference of over $1 million that's just there. The TBI has a reserve balance of $7 million specifically for this program. And if this were to pass, it'd have to be funded at the full $5.9 million, no less than what the TBI is getting now. And so it is definitely a fundamental shift from what they're used to. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong or that it's bad. It means that with this legislation, we're removing a barrier. We're removing a barrier for background checks, not just in the gun shop, but really in the private purchase side as well. And you say, well, $10 just isn't that much money. Well, it may not be, but if someone that wants to engage in getting a background check from a private purchase, this just removes one more barrier that's in the way besides going to the gun shop to get it done. And so yes, I understand what they're saying, but different is not bad. It is really going away from the fee base and drawing it into the budget process. And if I'd like to speak to, if I could, I think if we're fortunate to get out of the subcommittee today, I think we're discussing with some of the members and working on even a sunset provision, because nobody wants to bankrupt out the background check system. Nobody wants to take the technology out of the way. They're operating with a surplus as it sits right now. And the intent is to see how this would work, to see if we get more background checks as a whole in the state of Tennessee. And so the thought of a 2-year sunset, we're wide open to that, and happy to do that between sub and full. But and Chairman, I hope that answers your question, because it is a fundamental shift in how the funding takes place, but it is not an elimination of the funding. It's more of here's what a budget process looks like, as opposed to making it fee-based in turn to try to incentivize people to engage in the background check process.
It does seem to me that it is strictly a shift in funding. And I've been much in favor of increasing the ability for an average citizen to run a background check if they're doing a private purchase. And I understand TBI has a technical issue with that because of the NICS system, the federal system they use, and they're not allowed to do that by the federal rules. So their hands are kind of tied on that one. So I think this is a slight step in the right direction. It doesn't get as far as I would love to see it go. But it also, I think, from a funding mechanism, that's really what it comes down to is they've got full control over this pot of money without coming to the legislature. And they really would like to keep that. And your bill just shifts that to say, no, if you need a new computer system or a new upgrade or need some new phones, you're going to have to ask for it in the budget. And that I think that's more accountable to the citizens. And so I'm certainly in favor of it for that reason. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Russell and Representative Hill. I appreciate you bringing this piece of legislation. As I was sitting here listening to the debate and listening to the folks we had up here testifying it, and I had told people certain things where I may or may not be on this bill, but I had an idea. I thought, well, we may need to have more conversation about this, because if there's monies of $1 million per year going to a reserve, instead of making a shift in the entire thing and making it all or nothing, why don't we find a way to redirect those monies and subsidize some of these background checks instead? So we go to reduce the price of the background checks with the savings that we have. And that would be some sort of compromise I think I'd feel very comfortable with talking about, because it's just it's been a very interesting issue, and I understand what you're trying to do and support that. But I think there's other ways we may be able to look at this and maybe moving forward. So I just wanted to say that to the committee and the sponsor, just to see what your thoughts were.
Sure. I mean,
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, we're wide open to any discussion that makes it work. Of course, we obviously need to advance out of the subcommittee to be able to have that discussion. But again, it's not an intent. The intent of the legislation is not to defund anything. If anything, it's try to figure out in 2025 how to achieve the goal of serving more people while maintaining the existing program with the TBI. That's really what we want to do. But happy to have that discussion if we get to move forward.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair,
you're recognized.
If I may, because I know the fiscal on this thing is going to be hefty, even if it's $5 million, $4 million a year. And I was just trying to figure out a way that would be potentially cost neutral and get something done. I wouldn't mind. I know we're probably not going to finish. I don't know. Mr. Chair, will we finish today? What's our time?
It's not looking like it. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay. So maybe we roll the bill, talk about it.
Fine with me.
If I had a motion.
We got a motion and a second,
members-
then
whatever
without
members want to do.
objection, we will roll House Bill 1287 to the Hill.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Representative Todd, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we roll items 8, 9, 10, and 11 to the final calendar 2.
All right, without objection, we'll roll 8, 9, 10, 11 to the final calendar 2. All right, that brings us to the end of the calendar, and we will be adjourned subject to actually till next week. And everything we got to get to will be next week.
If you wanted to close.